Alright, I'd like to talk about functional harmony for the chords that we are using. To be able to create chord progressions following in logical order rather than guessing at random and hoping that it sounds good, there's some specific rules that we can follow that will help to create good sounding chord progressions. But this is actually very classical music oriented. It's not really about like rock or punk or anything like that. This is really about, you know, ancient classical stuff. So what I've separated these chords into is three different categories. We have a couple chords called the tonic chords, a couple chords called the subdominant, and some of these called the dominant chords. These three categories have specific functions and roles. So the tonic chords here are basically the starting and ending point. This is basically the very beginning or the resolution here. And these chords want to move us in this direction towards the subdominant chords, which help to build tension and some interest and prepare your ear to be able to hear the climax, the dominant chords, the powerful chords here that eventually sort of finish it back at the tonic. So the movement, the flow of going through these chords is from left to right. If I draw some arrows here, you can see how if the chords go from left to right. Now, it's important to note that you do not have to go one by one. You can go, you know, skip over one. You can skip over many. You can go straight from here all the way to here. But you cannot go backwards. If you go backwards, you're breaking the rules and it will sound bad. And I'll demonstrate this. One note about the subdominant chords. I've put them in order from weakest to strongest, okay? So the 6 is essentially the weakest of the subdominant chords. The 4 is sort of in the middle. And the 2 is the strongest. So basically the 2 leads directly here. You don't want to go backwards. The 4, you can go to the 2 if you want to. And the 6 can go through all of those. Now, the 6 is actually in two different categories. You could put it in the tonic, but you could also put it in the subdominant. And the reason is because well, if we look at the C major scale and the A minor scale, we notice that the roots of both of these chords are both of these keys are C major and A minor. They are relative to each other because they have the same chords and the same notes. Relative major, relative minor. Now, these two chords have a very strong gravitational pull. It's kind of like the earth and the sun. So you could sort of cheat your ear to pretend like the 6 is all of a sudden, you know, the sun. So I'll demonstrate this with some examples. We're going to start by playing through all this chord progression with just the logic order, starting from 1, going to 6, A minor, the 4, the 2, the 7, the 5, and the 1. And you can see how following that order it sounds really good. Let me just make a couple more chord progression examples so that, you know, you could sort of see how this order just matches very well. I'll try going from 1 to 6 to 2 to 7. See how that sounds. Just choosing chords in this order at random. Starting from the 1, the 4, to 5, and then I guess we will end it on the 6 here. I did mention I could fool my ear to do that. I'll just sort of, later I'll demonstrate why this really works, but for now we'll just kind of choose chords at random here. Anyway, here's the 1, a 2, have to go to 7, have to go to 5. There's a couple examples. Let's see how these sound. First one is 1 to the 6 to the 2, 7, and the 1. Okay. The next one is going to be 1 to 4 to 5. That didn't work so well. so that works perfectly fine. Now we have the next one, which is 1, 2, 7. That works pretty well too. So, as you can see, I can easily make chord progressions following this logic. Now, let me explain why that 6 worked. Okay, because I ended on a 6, and the first time I tried it, it was a little weird, right? You could hear when I ended on the low 6, it didn't sound right. Here was the 1, the 4, the 5. Out of order. So, if we go 1, 4, 5, 6, in that order, it sounds good, ascending. Anyway, so let's go ahead and talk about, after we play this 5 chord, and after we play the 7 chord, these are the dominant chords. What exactly do you want to hear after this? So let's go ahead and try this out. Here's the 1, the 5. What do you want to hear? The 1. Okay, so we've established that works. After the 7, same concept. Here's the 1, 7, and the 1. It works. So now, let's pretend like we really want to trick your ear here and make you hear the 6 instead of the 1. Let's just replace the 1 with a 6 because it is a tonic chord. So we can do this. Again, the gravitational pull of A minor is so strong that it allows us to cheat your ear and fool it into thinking it's the root again. The 5, and there's the 6. It works very well. The 7, 7, and the 6. 1, 7, 6. This doesn't work super well ascending. You have to sort of choose that 6. You have to be careful whether you're ascending or descending. Because the 1, the 5, like that kind of works, but it's definitely better the other direction. And for the 7, not as good as same chords, just the lower version of the same chord. Anyway, so that's basically how we're allowed to go from the only direction we can go is forwards, and if we want to go backwards, it has to be only dominant to tonic. You cannot go from a subdominant back to a tonic chord in this rule. I mean, obviously you can do it if you want to, but you'll find that it probably won't really sound as good. It won't really work classically. So there are some exceptions to this rule, though. Let's say that you want to continue the music after playing the dominant. You don't want to end it. You want to continue the music. So here's the 1, the 5. Now I want to continue playing music. What can I play? Well, the only possible option for our 5 chord is to play the 4. It's just the rule of this concept. So here's the 1, the 5, 4, and now we can continue 5 to 1. Just allows us to restart some chords. Here's the 1, the 5, the 4, and now we can continue this however we want to. I can go 2, 7, 5 if I want to. 2, 7, 5, and see how that sounds. 7. One more time. So 1, 5, the 4, the 2, and that's the end of the chord progression. It works. I can also change the ending here. Instead of playing 2, 7, 5, I can go from the 4 to the 7. Let's try that. And then I'll just end my chord progression. So here's the 1, 5, 4, 7, and I want to end this on the 6, just to fool your ear a little bit. Because I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to go from 7 to 6. It's possible. Hey, sounds cool, right? Oh, 5, 4, and that just perfectly works. So many different possibilities with these chord progressions. From the 5 and go back to 4 and do whatever I want to after that. Now there is one more exception of these dominant chords. The 7 can actually head up to a 3 chord. Okay, so this is we'll talk about the 3 a little bit later, actually, because the 3 has its own particular rule. Actually, you know what? I think it is the moment to talk about the 3s. I've already really explained everything else here. There's nothing else to know. So we're going to talk about 3. There's 3 rules of 3. 1, 2, and then we have a third rule of 3. Well, the rule of 3 is it's kind of more like a passing tone. It's a very, very weak subdominant chord, so weak that it's not even in this pattern. There's no place to put it. So we use it like a passing chord. We can put it before the 6 right here. We can put it before the 4 right here, and we can put it right after the 7 right here. So there's some reasons for this. For 3, let's look, or sorry, for the 6 right here, let's look at the rule of 3 to 6. Why is it possible to go from 3 to 6? Well, if we look at the 3rd chord here, it's the E minor chord. Now let's look at the minor scale. Let's find an E minor. Notice how it's the 5 chord. Well, the 5 chord leads back to the 1 chord, correct? So 5 to 1, the movement from E minor to A minor is very powerful. You can hear it here. Alright, so in major, E minor can lead into A minor. So here's the 1, the 3, and the 6. It sounds really good when we do that. 3 to 6. Totally possible. We can continue our chord progression after that, doing whatever we want to. So I can add a 2, a 5. Let's try it. 1, 3, 6, 2, 5, 4, 7, 3. Here at the end, we'll talk about why the 3 works, but I think, you know, you can see I can just continue making these chord progressions for a long period of time. It's always going to work. 1, 3, 6, 2, 5. And that works. So 1, 3, 6, 2, 5. One more time. I kind of screwed up there at the end, but anyway, you can hear how this totally works. This long chord progression that I've made, following the rules, and it works very well. Okay, so now the second one was the 4. So why does 4 work so well? It's simply because we have a half step in between E and F. So that movement is very soft. And it just kind of... What do you want to hear after that? Just that. That's the 3 chord to the 4 chord. So we can start on the 1, go to 3, 4, and then after the 4, what do you want to hear? Well, what happens? So here's the 1, 3, 4. What do you want to hear? Probably the dominant chords over here, either a 7 or a 5. So let's try putting the 7 at the end. 3, 4, the 7, and then the 1. Or the 1, the 3, 4, the 5, 1. And if I really want to go crazy, I can even add the 2 here at the end of 4. So 1, 3, 4, 2, 7. And I'm just playing these chord progressions. Anyway, next is the 7 to 3. The 7 to 3, basically, the reason this works is because the notes of 7 are B, D, and F. And actually, the notes of E minor, sorry, not B diminished. B diminished doesn't matter here. But the notes of E minor are E, G, B. Okay? E, G, and B. Now the notes of E minor 7th, if you've ever heard of E minor 7th, E, G, B, D. Okay? Now, that's totally fine, E minor 7. Let's go to the G here, and we have a G, B, D. If we wanted to keep going to the minor 7 to the 7th, it would be a G, B, D, F. But that F doesn't matter. What we see here is, notice how like this is pretty much like almost the same chord. Right? We have a GBD here and a GBD here. Yeah, so the D isn't really here, but it could be there if you made it a 7th chord. So essentially, like, these two chords are really, really similar to each other. So the 3 can kind of act as a 5 chord for this 7th chord because it's actually a 5th apart. Everything's really nice. Remember how before we had the A minor to E minor? Well, this is kind of the same thing. It's a 5th apart. Although this one was going backwards. This one also goes backwards here, I believe, right? Yes, it does. So here we have the 1. Then I play the 7. The 3. So one more time. So that 3 kind of acts as the 5 chord in this situation. So notice how it's like the same sound. One more time. Here's the 3 and the 5. That has the very same sound. What I'm playing here is 1, 7, 3, 1, and I'm also playing the 1, 7, 5, 1. 1, 7, 5, 1 and 1, 7, 3, 1 sound very similar. 1, 7, 3, 1, and 1, 7. So you can't even hear the difference between those two. So that's why the 3 works after the 7. But not really for anything else. Okay, so that was the rule of going backwards. Again, you can really only go forwards, but there's one specific rule that allows you to go backwards. I guess there's a couple. One here, 6 to 1. We will talk about that in just right now. We also have this opportunity of playing 3 after 7, and then yeah, so we got basically the only real way to go backwards is from that 5 chords. It does not work going from 7 to 4. You will hear this. I will give you an example. Here's 7 to 4. It just doesn't really work too well. So from 6 to 1, this works pretty well because, again, there's strong gravitational pulls of A minor and C, so you can kind of go like, here's the C, 6, 1, 6. And it just kind of works. Going back and forth between these two chords is totally cool. So that's the other exception to be able to go backwards. You can go backwards from the 5. You can use the 3 after the 7. You can use the 3 before the 4, the 3 before the 6. You can go backwards from the 6. Okay, so hopefully this chart has made some sense to you. I think for me it was very eye-opening to be able to understand this whole concept. And now I'll talk a brief bit about minor, because in minor it's pretty much exactly the same thing with some small differences. Okay, so basically what I've done is I've translated this into minor, and right here we have this. Now the first thing you might notice is the 7 and 5 here have been slightly altered. Okay, that's the biggest difference. In minor, you have a major 7. Right here underneath, we could put the major 7. We also have the minor 5th, but we also have a major fifth that we can use. So the thing is, if I use these original minor chords, the 7 major and the 5 minor, it's actually going to sound pretty weak in minor. So here's the, let's look at this. The dominant chords are supposed to be really strong chords, right? Well, if I go from 7, the capital 7, which is the major, back to 1, or the lowercase 5 back to 1, it's going to sound something like this. So here's the 7. So here's the first chord, 1. Here's the G. It works. I might be slightly out of tune at this point. Let me just pause this. G string, always the G string. So 1, 7, back to the 1. It's fine, like it works. There's no problem with that. But what about using a diminished 7 instead? What if I change this from a capital 7 to a diminished 7 to just make this so much more powerful? And this is diminished with a little circle. Here's how that's gonna sound. Here. One more time. Isn't that more powerful? Rather than, it's like way different, way more powerful to use that 7 diminished. So that's why that is allowed. We can do that. For the 5, same concept. If we use the original 5 minor, it sounds good. What about major 5? Isn't that more powerful? Versus, it's just weaker. That's the minor 5, major 5. So the 5th major sounds really good here. So you can use both if you want to, but generally, in classical theory, the 5 is mostly major. So now, again, we have this arrow of progression. We can go from here to there, blah, blah, blah. This is all going to sound good. Let's just make a couple examples of chord progressions. These are, again, tonic chords, subdominants, and the dominants here. So let's go like 1, 4, 2 diminished, 5. You know, I'll just make one chord progression just so you can see. This is going to work. I'll play through the full one first, and I'll play through this secondary one that I made. So here's the 1, the 6, the 3, the 2, and that all works. 1, 6, 4, 2, 7, and 1. Perfectly legal. I'll play my new chord progression I've just made up here. It sounds like this. 1, 4, 2. Oh, actually, that was a 7. Sorry. 1, 4, 2, 5, and 1. Sounds really nice. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at the 3, because the 3 is now major, and there's the rule of 3s. So the 3 goes before the 6, the 3 goes before the 4. The 3 can only go after the major 7. You cannot put it after the diminished 7 because it's going to sound horrible. So here is the 7 to 3 progression right here. 7 to 3. Starting on the 1, obviously, ending, I guess, we'll end on the 5 or something. Oh, no, we'll just, it doesn't matter. We'll end it on the 5. I don't know. So 1. Isn't that like a Ramones song or something? I'm pretty sure. Something like that. So that was really nice. I think we can end... I think this is probably good enough. If I play the diminished 7 and then the 3, it's going to sound terrible. So... Sorry. One more time. I mean, it's okay, but it doesn't really work too well. One more time so you can hear it. It's like, iffy. I wouldn't really... It's not following the laws. So, anyway, these are the laws of theory Again, here at the 5th, you can go to the 4th. This is a possibility right there. You can play the 4. And let's test one last thing. Let's make sure that we can go 5, 3, 4. I think that is definitely a possibility. If I go from 5 to use that 3 to a 4, although this is only a test of theory here. If I go from 1 to 5, and then I want to return to the 4 following this arrow, but I put the 3 in front of it. Here's the capital 3, and then I play the 4. Let's see how this sounds, okay? So we got the 1 minor, 5, the 3. Doesn't that sound awesome? Okay, so I think I've made my point here of how we can use this logic to actually create chord progressions so quickly, so easily, and they make sense, and like you can hear it and it just follows your ear, and it's really cool. So the next video is going to be about using a different type of cadence to change chords with using intervals. This one was just a function, tonic, dominant, and subdominant. Oh, I wanted to show you one last thing before I close this up. Going backwards. If you try going backwards through this progression, it's going to sound absolutely terrible. So let's start at the 1. I'll do this in major. Let's go back to the 5. Now this is legal. If I go from 1 to 5, totally legal. I'm not breaking any rules. I'm going from left to right. But after that, if I go to the 7, I just destroyed the music. If I go back to the 2, there's nothing there. Back to the 4. Nothing is being built here. It's just chords, just like random stuff. So one more time from the 1, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, and 1. It doesn't work. Only at the very last 2 and the very first one, because it worked. But going backwards through these chords just sound terrible. 7, 2, 4, 6. 7, 2, 4, 6. It just sounds terrible. So that's why we only go forwards, and if we go backwards, we only have 1 rule, as well as 2 rules, and this one here. Okay, so this was theory of functions, and a very long video, but I think very interesting for me. Hope you enjoy my next one.